Hello there, and today in this episode, I'm joined by a colleague of mine from Germany, Georg Supp. He's actually from Freiburg. Georg is a physiotherapist, and I think Georg and I have some disclaimer that both of us know each other from the musculoskeletal world, and. And Georg is a very experienced clinician. He's a teacher in the Mackenzie Institute International, and he's also over the years produced some publications. When you look him up, he's been involved in several publications. Um, and what I like with most of them is that they had clinical relevance, and that's also why I brought in Georg today, because today we're going to talk about outcome measures. And Georg, could you give a better presentation of who Georg Supp is and maybe pronounce the name more correct
Yes.
than I just did? Thanks.
Uh, Thanks a lot, Brian. Thanks for the invitation and thanks for the introduction. And you did quite well. My first name is Georg, and the second one is Supp, Supp. And yeah, thanks a lot. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here with you because I've seen the long line of experienced and famous people that you interviewed. So I'm far below. I'm way below that. So we have to lower the bar a bit here. And so yeah, as you said, I live here in Germany, in the south of Germany, in Freiburg. Still a clinician. I work 1 or 2 days a week with patients. And then, as I used to say, I'm not really excellent in anything. So I do many things a bit. So I'm a clinician, and as I said, I'm teaching internationally for the institute, Mackenzie Institute, in countries like, especially in countries where you wouldn't go for holiday. That is great. I was in Malawi and in Iran 5 times, and South Korea and China, Hong Kong, different countries. So really great experiences. And apart from that, I'm also teaching a course which is called Talk It Easy. It's about pitfalls and opportunities in daily clinic. It's a course on communication together with a good friend. And some years ago, I started getting more into the outcome stuff, so patient-reported outcomes. And so 1 year ago, a bit more than 1 year ago, I founded together with some friends from Freiburg a little company. It's called MOFIS, so measuring outcomes in physiotherapy. And since then, yeah, a lot of my daily work or some interest of what I have shifted towards patient-reported outcomes and how can we physios, how can we use them and how can our patients benefit from them. I think that's enough about me.
Yeah, but you forgot the a recent and very important one. You're
Oh,
also you're also part of the what we would normally say the scientific committee in the World Physiotherapy Organization, and just had a very successful conference in Japan last year.
yeah. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I forgot that. I shouldn't. Yeah, I was a member of the Congress Program Committee for Tokyo 2025. So I worked for 2 years for this conference. And yeah, it was. I have the amazing honor to be. I was re-elected or appointed again for the next conference in Guadalajara in Mexico. So another 2 years working for World Physiotherapy, which is, yeah, definitely one of the greatest things I ever experienced in my professional life. Yeah, that is a great honor and pleasure, and can't I can't praise World Physio enough for this opportunity they give me. I really feel privileged with this. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah. No, I think that's a huge honor to be given and a huge responsibility to to bring the world physiotherapy out to the world, and not just how we look at it in the Western world.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what you just said. So that we are living in our musculoskeletal Western bubble, and we have no idea what's going on in the rest and how important that is. And that's what I learned basically in
Yeah.
the last 2 years, and I'm still eager to learn in the future.
And we'll put up a link in the show notes to the World Physiotherapy Conference next time. Shouldn't we do that, Georg?
Thank you. Yeah, it will be great. And my honor and my pleasure to see you there.
So today we're digging more into like the problems as they also said. How could you give us as a clinician and from your many years of experience, you haven't always used patient-reported outcome measures. Could you give me and the listener an idea and a perspective why you've started using it? Why have you all of a sudden changed perspective?
Yeah. So first of all, in our clinic, we have a long history of giving it tries, giving to try to measure outcomes, to use prompts, to use some validated stuff, somehow to evaluate what we do, to give our patients also a voice. And so we did that for years, for decades, actually. We started in the late 90s to doing that. And we, for many times, we failed. So we tried to go for all the typical legacy questionnaires like ODI and Rowan de Morris for the back and Coos and Who's and Visa A and all the stuff that all the specific ones and we tried it on paper and everything and we failed again and again. And over the years we found that we have to go somehow digitally. We somehow have to make this in a format in a format that is easy for patients, it's easy for us. So we found that there is this company in the US, Photo, Focus on Therapeutic Outcomes, which
Yeah.
is now owned by NetHealth. And Photo actually they were quite ahead of everything I knew at that time. So we found that Photo is a great tool and we have to translate it into German. So I had some contacts, I had some discussions with folks from Photo, and we started translating it into German as a clinic. But after half a year, we found that this is not going to work. It's too big. The task is too big, and it's not paid, and we need hours and weeks and years. And also Photo was not really interested in that. It was more kind of I knew some folks there, and it was more like they want to be nice and they allowed us to work with this, but there was no real interest in having Photo in German. So we stopped that. And then we were looking for German alternatives. There wasn't any. And actually then we found one company at that time. They offered something for hospitals, for university hospitals, like Charité in Berlin or Freiburg University Hospital, really big hospitals. And so we uh, we started a connection with them, a cooperation with them, or let's say we were their clients, paid a hell of a money, and started using Promise 29 in our clinic. That was more than 5 years ago, and that changed dramatically our way of thinking and dealing with the whole thing of patient-reported outcomes. But unfortunately, we found that the system we used was not really, it did not fit for physiotherapy outpatient clinics. It was really for big hospitals and it was blown up. It was way too expensive. It didn't really fit for daily life as a clinician and physio. So at some point, we decided we have to come up with our own system. And we started building up our own system and still focusing on Promise 29. And so now, since 3 years, we use Mofis in our clinic. And then 1 year ago, we started even a little company called Mofis. And now we give German-speaking physios the opportunity to use patient-reported outcomes with their patients in the clinic. So that is my story with in short, with prompts, with patient-reported outcome measures.
Yeah. Because I remember when I started using it, because I failed several times.
Hmm.
And I think what I'm doing now is more like a hybrid of the patient-specific functional scale,
Yeah.
like a very even shorter version of a short one.
Yes.
Because I've tried the Roland Morris, the NDI, and the fear avoidance, and it works for like a couple of months, and then I don't know why, then it just, and then you don't do the follow-up and stuff. So you need to have like a system. But from a clinician perspective, why did you have the eager to start using the prompts?
Yeah. So we always found that we have to value, first of all, we have to value the patient perspective more, and we have to do it in a standardized way. And also, we wanted to evaluate what we do from a very, let's say, from a kind of a neutral perspective, and not just asking our patients, "How are you?" and maybe do our crumbs or our performance tests and have our data from there, but really wanted to have more the patient's perspective, and we want to have that in a way that we can easily evaluate and analyze what we do. So my goal was always at the end of the year, I wanted to just click on a button to see how did we do with shoulder patients older than 50, having problems since more than 3 months, and blah blah blah. Or the same with back pain patients. And we never could do that. So the question is why using prompts. So first of all, I don't like the term patient-reported outcomes. I'm with Matthias Rose. He's a professor in Berlin, and he's also saying he likes more patient-reported health characteristics because the term patient-reported outcomes that gives the impression it's all about results, it's all about success, it's all about outcomes. But that's not the main point with prompts. For us in the clinic, for example, I think one of the most valuable aspects in prompts, using prompts in the clinic, is 4 days before the patient comes to the clinic, our system sends an invitation to an online questionnaire, and patients they fill in this questionnaire at home. So when they come to the clinic, the clinician already has checked the Promise 29 of this patient, and the clinician sees which categories does the patient have issues with. And then on day one, when the patient shows up, we always say, at least I say, and most of my clinic, most of my team, okay, Mr. So and so, thanks a lot for filling in that questionnaire. That's great. Let's have a look at this. So we go to the screen and we check the Promise 29, which shows up in a very easy traffic light frame or scenery. And so we go through the domains with the patient. For example, if the patient scores high on anxiety or depression or maybe fatigue, we ask, hey, we see that it's going to in the reddish area here. Is that something that has to do with the back pain that brings you in? Or is something else? Or do you mind that we will talk about this? What do you think about that? And that it's a great door opener for discussions about these issues with patients. It makes it so much easier because the patient already opened up towards the system. And now we're doing this research on prompts and patient perspective. We also see that patients, they really appreciate the opportunity that you give them. They can reflect about themselves when you ask these questions in advance. So it's a big advantage for us as clinicians. And before actually the session in the clinic starts, we have some information and we have a picture about the patient.
Yeah, because you're not living in a system. I mean, operating as a physiotherapist in Germany in a private practice, you don't have to like my understanding of your system is that you don't have to provide like the payers that shows you only use 4.3 visit. It's not like the US and in regards to reimbursement and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you're not doing it because you're directly motivated by cash and money.
No, that's the point. It needs some intrinsic motivation
Yeah.
in our country still to use prompts. Or I try to convince colleagues, or let's say give them the information. that they see the advantage they would have using prompts, even
Yeah.
if it's not paid, even if it's not reimbursed by the insurance companies or it's not asked by the insurance companies.
And why the Promise 29? Just by coincidence or because it
No,
covers like a lot of aspect of being a human
yes.
being?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, there's a story behind that. So we tried all the so-called legacy questionnaires. We
Yeah.
tried them in the past. They're called legacy questionnaires, actually.
I never heard about that before, but I love it because they've
Ah,
been
yeah.
around for ages.
It is actually, when you look at literature, they are called legacy questionnaires. And
Okay.
Promise 29 is one of the new ones because it actually patients were heavily involved in the creation of that.
Okay.
But the story is, I was sitting in Las Vegas. That's a true story. I was sitting in Las Vegas at breakfast together with Daniel Deutscher from Israel. He's a good friend, and at that time we were both at the Research Foundation. We were members of the Research Foundation, and Daniel is the worldwide expert on outcomes. I think there's no one on earth who knows more and who's better in explaining it, and just a brilliant guy and a nice chap. So we were sitting at breakfast, and I asked Daniel, Daniel, if you would only have one questionnaire to use with all your patients, because I'm looking for one questionnaire. I don't want this broad variety. Because if a patient makes an appointment in the clinic and the receptionist has to think 1 second which questionnaire to choose for this patient, ODI, Visa A, blah, 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 then the probability that the receptionist won't choose any of them is very high.
Yeah.
So I only want one for every patient. And I want one for every patient. So it's easy to analyze them, it's easy to compare, it's easy to discuss in our meetings. So I asked Daniel, what would you go for? And I expected him to say photo because he's an employee of photo actually also. And then he said, oh, I would go for promise. Okay, promise, never heard about that. What's that? Yeah, look at it. So when on my way back to the airport, I started investigating, and I found Promise Health Initiative. It's just a great thing. It's a great institution, and for the sake of our patients. And then I found Promise 29, which is 29 questions, 8 different domains, and it's a so-called generic questionnaire, as you
Yeah.
said. It gives a good understanding of the well-being, of the health, of the situation of a patient. It's not region specific, it's not pathology specific. It's you can use it with every patient. And from the start, I love the idea to do that. So we started in 2020 using Promise 29 in the clinic, and up to now we have 9,600 questionnaires already, filled in questionnaires from 3,800 patients. So that's a lot of data.
Yeah, that's a lot.
First of all, first time in my life, I'm not just anecdotes, I really have data. So if somebody asks me, how are you doing with your back pain patients? Yeah, I just check my system. And I have data. I'm not just telling stories because I'm fed up with colleagues who you sit together the whole evening and they're just going on and tell you anecdotes, which is fantastic for a while. But at some point, you don't like anecdotes. You want some data.
Yeah, do you think the application of data, being able to provide data, is also something that this is a bit of a leading in questioning? And I'm guilty of not doing it if you say yes. Do you think that being able to show data from a validated tool, do you think that kind of
Yep,
underpin us as a profession? Do
yep,
you think
that's
you yeah,
definitely. It is definitely what helps us to really to sharpen our profession, to form our profession. If we as a profession only exist of anecdotes, only have anecdotes, and we don't have real data to show what we do and what we can do and can't do also, then I think the medical community will never take us really serious. At
yeah,
least that is, I can only sometimes somehow speak for Germany. I know that we are quite far behind when it comes to this, but teaching in many countries all over the world, I know that there's a big gap between research and daily clinic. And in most countries, outcome measures, prompts or whatever, or even other outcome measures, they did not make the step from research to clinical practice.
Yeah.
So you read about it this in articles, you read about it in peer-reviewed journals, but in everyday clinic, most clinicians they don't care about outcomes and they don't care about patient-reported outcomes.
Yeah, yeah. I can't remember for you or if it was there was another speaker, Yannick Leflamme,
Mhm.
who was like one of his main argumentations was that whatever gets measured gets evaluated.
Yes, and whatever gets measured gets improved
Yeah,
also.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's actually, I loved his quote, and he allowed me to use it actually, even for my company, for Mofis, and because it's so true
Yeah, yeah.
when you look at that. And you
No,
know the point is when you use validated data, it's a good starting point. It's not everything about data. Of course, we're living in a world where it's not everything about data, but it gives you a great background also to question yourself and to improve yourself. If you look at the data, okay, maybe I can do better with low back patients who are maybe older than 60 and are slightly overweight or whatever. We have when you have all this data.
yeah. How was it like from going from we talked about it before, Georg, that you and I could at least in some part of our physiotherapy life be living in like a very small box of musculoskeletal physiotherapy, and in that box there's some pride and there's something about being specific and stuff like that. How is it from you for you and your colleague personally working with a generic instead of like a more specific course or the
Yes.
ODI or NDI?
It's great, and the main thing is that you are not restricted to this. Of course, when you do your history taking and you do your clinician reported outcomes also, you get additional information about the knee or the angle of the range of motion or whatever, or all the
Yeah,
other stuffs. And you can do your performance tests. So this adds to the prompts, but the prompts are always the basis. And for example, we have weekly meetings, and very often we discuss patients. And since we use prompts in the clinic, now when we discuss a patient, we always start with the question, how does Promise 29 look with this patient? And then we start with the clinical stuff. We first look at the patient's perspective, and then we talk about what about banding and sitting and all the but maybe worse better section or whatever and the clinical aspects. So and that adds so much because it's all about the patient and we should listen to the patient first. That that is what I learned over the years.
yeah, yeah. And how long what you're we're getting to in a minute what the patient think about this, because that's
Mhm.
where I think what you're doing is really you've had success like integrating it and then you've taken it a step further. But before we go in that direction, how long time does it take for the average patient to fill in the Promise 29?
It's about 6 to 8 minutes. So it's way less than the legacy questionnaires. And that is one, when you read the literature, that is one aspect that is very often recommended. All the promise questionnaires, they are really, they're easy to fill in and they're not too time demanding. And it's patients can do that. So we see when we look at our response rate, they're quite high. So the response rates of our questionnaires. So we do um, questionnaires at the beginning, in some cases interim, so after 2 to 3 weeks, at discharge, at 6 months, and at 12 months. And even with the 6 and 12 months, we still are up to 70% response rate, which
That's
is
high.
amazing. It is. So usually in orthopedics, you might have about 50% response rate. The numbers we have in the clinic, and which is even higher for initial and discharge, The numbers we have is usually you only get them in oncology when it's about cancer stuff,
Yeah.
because their patients are used to that and they are motivated to that. But it's uncommon for orthopedic setting to have these high response rates.
Yeah. That
And
leads me into a different question. Do you think that I know you can't you can only answer anecdotal about this probably, or maybe you actually have something in your results that could show it. But do you think the reason why that people do the 6 and the 12 month, do you think it's because when they did in the beginning and that they're met differently than before you applied the promise, they feel more obligated?
sure, yeah, sure, they do. I can't comment on the reasons why they do the long-term follow-ups. That's really an interesting question. So somehow we see that because it's you can think it's mainly administrative. It doesn't help them anymore.
No, that's what I mean.
So and the thing is, but even when you look at the discharge questionnaire, that doesn't help either. So what we tend to do now is we give the discharge questionnaire to the patient before we discharge them. So that is also something I learned from Daniel. That is that do it that way. So when the patient fills in the discharge questionnaire, and then in the last session you have a look together at the discharge questionnaire, you can still draw some conclusions, and it still has some value for the patient. You can, for example, ask, "Oh, we see that you don't sleep well. Is that something you might work on, maybe without me?" Or you can see, "Oh, the pain interference is still high. Maybe come for 2 more sessions and we can work on that." So it still has a value which the usual discharge questionnaire has not.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
back,
yeah.
back, but back to your question, I think yes, these patients they feel more um, committed to you from the beginning. And what we also find, some of them in the 6 and 12 months follow-up, they give some nice commands or explanations because we also have a comment box
Yeah.
where they can write something in, and some write, still doing so fine and thanks a lot. Or somebody wrote, just recently I got a comment, you know, from a distance, I think physiotherapy didn't do the job for me. It didn't help me at all. So they expressed that. So but
But
that's an interesting question. Why do people fill in the follow-ups? Because it's not a study. They don't they didn't give a consent to this. So
no. Yeah, I know intuitively, like the last comment, that would be, oh, that's not nice. Or it must be one of my colleagues they've seen or something like that. But if we look at a broader perspective, maybe having to answer it and writing stuff down again comes back to maybe there's some reflection. And maybe
and
that reflection could
it's
like provide a different path the next time.
and I don't know if you heard about the mere measurement effect.
No?
That's really interesting. The mere measurement effect means that just the fact that you ask questions like this, so you collect patient-reported outcomes, that this has an effect actually on behavior and also at some point at outcomes of patients. So there are some studies about that, and there is a recent systematic review from Austria about the mere measurement effect. And we can say that just using prompts actually has the potential to make a change with the patient because they give it more thoughts and answering questions, for example, on how do you do in daily life in your household and stuff, and they answer this in a certain way. This actually might reflect on this and they might even go and do some things more in their household just because they answered the question and thought about this. And that's a very interesting aspect. Just
Yeah.
and there are some articles who ask the question, actually, is collecting outcomes, is that already kind of part of management? Does it already help?
Yeah.
Does it actually really help to collect outcomes? Just a pure fact. And it looks like there's no convincing evidence. There's convincing evidence that it improves the communication between clinician and patient. There is a tendency that we see that um, it might even help with outcomes. Just the
Yeah.
fact that you measure them.
Yeah. Interesting. But then now you've implemented it. Now you did the bold move. Now
Mhm.
you asked the patient what they think about the fact that you use Promise
Yeah,
2069, didn't you?
yeah, and that is amazing. So first of all, the implementation, it sounds a bit simple and easy when you put it that way, but it took years.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not an easy thing to do. And it needs really somebody who's crazy enough to push the team and to come back. And now we are on a point in the clinic where we do it in a regular way, and most colleagues they are really dedicated to it. But and then the next step, yeah, I was always interested in what the heck do patients think about that they have to do this? It's so uncommon. No one does it. And so we started a research project in April 2024. We started collecting data. So when we discharge a patient, we ask them, would you be interested in just um, um, being with us in our study project, being part of our study project? And would it be interesting that it takes maybe 5 or 6 minutes to click through some questions? And the response rate now is about 42%, which is not too bad. And up to now, we have about 200 responses already. So we have data from 200 patients. And what we did is we came up with 9 possible advantages of patient-reported outcomes and 8 possible disadvantages of patient-reported outcomes. So we came up with these statements or advantages, disadvantages from the literature and partly from our experience over years with working with them. So we give the patients these statements and we ask them on a Likert scale if they totally agree or totally disagree, or there are some steps in between. So we have a 6 point Likert scale, so we don't have the middle, which you should actually avoid because most of them go mostly for the middle.
The neutral one. Yeah.
So we don't have the middle one, and that is really interesting. So we see that overwhelming there's an overwhelming positive attitude towards most of the advantages. And actually, and the when it comes to the disadvantages, um, I think the highest agreement on disadvantage is about 30% for one of the statements. So we don't find a big support of the disadvantages that are described in the literature, but we find really a great support of the advantages that are described or that we formulated. But even more interesting are the statements of patients. So because we ask patients, do you want to add anything?
Yeah.
Do you want to add advantages or disadvantages, or do you want to add anything in general? And that is really great. And this morning I just printed in the latest list, and it's a long list of what patients actually really come up with, and partly they really give it some great thoughts. So, for example, what we find quite commonly is that they refer to the fact, or they appreciate the fact that going through these questions help them to reflect what's going on and help them also to think about some aspects that they didn't thought about before. So, and they really feel that this, or some of them feel that this helps them to get a better understanding of their situation. That is something that really, really interesting. And of course, we get positive feedbacks, but we also got some criticism. For example, some are actually criticizing the generic nature of the questionnaire. They think, oh, it's a lot of psycho questions. It's not too much about my knee, for example. I miss questions about my body part. And but we have one statement, and I just read this this morning again, where somebody wrote that, yeah, I found it too much on the psychosocial part, but then I noticed it's actually good. It's actually exactly right. So I had to correct myself. Now thinking about it, I think it's a good point.
So that kind of that's again like flip it and bring it to perspective,
Yes,
and
that's it.
then gets reflective.
Yep.
Yeah. But I
That
could, but that's always the thing with questionnaires, isn't that some people dislike them because they're not personal enough.
yes. And that's also what we get in the question or in the commands that people say, okay, there is I like to talk about this in person. But they do actually, because we have the history, we have the face-to-face meeting. So, and they think that I want to elaborate on this further, and they can.
Yeah.
So that is really interesting. And really, what I really appreciate that many patients, they really took their time to write in some commands and in their own language. So they didn't just use the tick the box Likert scale, but they took the time and they wrote it down. That's great. That gives a nice qualitative aspect to our research, which is more quantitative actually.
Yeah. 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 That's really nice to like to bring the qualitative and the quantitative together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
And especially meaningful when you're working with human beings.
yeah, definitely. And of course, you have some true haters. They
Yeah.
hate these
Yeah.
questions. They hate anything which comes digitally. They hate anything what is not 100% personalized. And in the past, so thinking about these 3,600 patients we now included, I think there were about 10 who were so shocked by what we do that they didn't come to the clinic.
Yeah.
So we received some very nasty emails from some people. How can you do that? How can you let a computer ask me these questions? Actually, I don't want to come to your clinic. This is so horrible what you do, and you don't deserve to be somebody from the medical community, whatever. And but these are maybe the same that are with when it came to COVID, they are conspiracy folks and whatever. So
Yeah. Yeah.
and you might be actually happy not to have them in the clinic. I don't know.
Yeah. That's also maybe it's a like sometimes it's about being level and oh now I lack the English word, when you're working with people and you're trying to
You put them in a box, you mean, or
know when you're trying to be on the same side, like what are their main aim by going
hmm
and what you can provide, like
right.
in the alliance and in the communication, where we're trying to are we on the same path?
Yeah, so their expectation might be
Yeah,
completely
yeah, it's
different.
true. Like fitting, does it fit expectations? So maybe it's also a way to like, as you said, maybe it's not good to have them in the clinic, but we can't really think about it in that way when we are health persons, right?
Right, right.
Uh,
That's the point, and that's a point, and but it helps, and what we also found was very helpful. We added to the Promise 29. We added also the question, "What's your goal? What's the goal you want to reach with
yeah,
physiotherapy?" And then when we discharge the patients, our system uh, recites the goal and asks the patient, would you actually agree to this? So because the system says I reached that goal, and then the patient can either fully agree or fully disagree, or maybe neutral in the middle. We have the middle,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and that's really interesting when you see how many of your patients actually reach their goal, which they set by themselves. And so,
Yeah,
and you can have a look at the pie chart at any time and see where are you and where are your patients, and it makes you humble actually.
yeah. Could you from your data, Georg, can you then like try to see certain subgroups?
Yes,
Are you
do that.
checking?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we have a nice filter function in our system, So we can filter for of course for duration of symptoms, and that makes a big difference, especially when it comes to low back pain. That's amazing. It's exactly what the literature shows. So when you look at the whole outcomes and also at the goal and how many of them reach their goal, it's a dramatic difference between the acute, subacute, and the chronics. And of course, we can look at age, and we can look at BMI, for example, which might be important for lower extremities.
Yeah,
And we look at some. We can look at the intervention. Was it physio? Was it primarily medical functional training? So was it more with machines and training, or was it more passive, for example, and stuff? So we can look at that, and yeah, we have a nice filter function, and of course we look at different joints and stuff, and
yeah. Ah, that's really interesting. That we're looking forward to some good things in the future, I can hear.
yeah, it's
Please, please share at conferences and
yeah,
worldwide anyway, other
I
ways.
so it's interesting, and we are still burning for it, and
Yeah,
a lot of interesting stuff. And currently, our statistician, he's doing the next interim analysis. So I will have some data in January, updated data. And for example, there are some issues like we know now that 95% of all patients, they prefer the digital form of questionnaires. And there is no difference between male and female or age. And even the older ones, they prefer a digital version. So that's out. And also the majority they think that the questionnaire does a good job in asking also for the psychosocial issues because they might have an influence on the recovery. We have an agreement of 93% when it comes to this question, for example. But we also see that some patients also say it's just one point in time that
yeah,
the questionnaire is asking. It does not really give the whole picture. It only gives one point in time, and that's of course that's disadvantages. That's a negative aspect.
yeah, yeah. But that's always been the discussion using questionnaires. But what I actually think is what you're doing by letting people fill in these questionnaires, you do them like, did you say 4 days before they come in?
Mhm. 4 days, yeah.
Yeah, that's also interesting because they like just by looking at people's data before they come in, it's very interesting because it provides you an idea. Maybe it provides you with, it's only 4 days, but maybe it provides you with an idea how like how stable they are. Can
That
you see
that
that?
Yep, that's the point. Yep, that's the point. And actually, it helps you as a clinician because there is a nice article. Maybe you are aware of this. Donna Salmon in 2020. Donna Salmon and Abraham Verghese, they looked at practices or strategies how you can improve the first encounter you have with patients. And it was a great study. They did a review and they did interviews, and it was an amazing study. You have to read it, you will love it. And what I've also found is there was one strategy how to improve the first encounter was really collect as many information about the patient as possible before in advance. So it helps you to kind of to focus on the patient.
Yeah,
So it helps you to even before the patient enters the clinic to focus on that and think about how can I connect with that patient. So it's and there's amongst the aspect you just mentioned about the stability, that is also a great aspect which I see for myself all the time.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's really interesting.
Yeah,
I
and
think unless we're doing a sequel, I think we probably like have to stop now. But
good.
if we should finish it, we started, Georg. I mean, it's interesting bringing academia into clinical practice and
Mm,
then trying to unravel how it benefits the one that's supposed to benefit, namely the patient, right?
definitely. Yes. And I really think we need more clinical relevant research, and
Oh
we should
yeah.
stop publishing the 1,000th systematic review and all this stuff. So we need more. Maybe it's simple. It's very simple what we do currently. It's not rocket science.
No.
We just ask patients, but it might be actually really helpful at the end. And our goal is that we want to kind of support the implementation of prompts in
Yeah.
daily clinic.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Well, Georg, thanks a lot for sharing your, what I would say, experience, but also development
Thank you,
with integrating
Brian.
this. And a huge thanks for me and the profession by trying to do stuff like this, because it's not
Thanks.
easy, as you started out saying.
Yeah, it was great to chat with you, Brian. And yeah, I really like your podcast. I like your work, and it's great. It's a great resource also. Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Georg. Thank you.
Okay.